is that Blake has trademark systems for both home sellers and home buyers. They are trademarked, so we can't give you all the details, but more than happy every week to tell you the most important part of that system.
Yes, and that's really the DNA behind why we do the show. We talk about it, and just doing the show over 10 years, I think we're 12 years now, something like that, 12 plus years, is that I made a promise a long time ago that we just mention this every show a little bit, because no matter what kind of cool stuff I talked about or like the market or whatever, people still made the same just flat-out dumb decisions in terms of the agents they choose. And what they did is they make this huge mistake. And it doesn't matter how affluent they are, how many properties they sold, any of that. It always comes down to this thing that they make this mistake of thinking that all real estate agents are the same. And it could not be any further from the truth, just like any doctor, any lawyer, right? If I'm charged with a crime I didn't commit, I don't want a part-time attorney who is a friend of a friend who's tried one or two cases, right? I want the absolute best, most aggressive, most knowledgeable attorney in that type of law who can help give me a competitive advantage to help me get the outcome I want. But for some reason, when people do it with their largest asset, aka real estate, they don't have that same really demand or that same level of what they're looking at. They'll just go with a friend or a friend who sold 2 houses before, put some cell phone pictures on, and hope the property sells. And so that's why we do this show, because here's the deal. The single most important variable that determines your failure or success as a home seller and also a home buyer comes down to one thing only, and that thing is the agent that you choose, period, right? It's not the wall color, not the grass quality, not really any of that. It comes down to the agent you have and really how they execute from A to Z. And what the reality is, in selling a property, there's 118 different variables from A to Z, meaning things can go good or go bad at each one of those points. And if each one's handled correctly, what it does is it puts money in your pocket, property gets sold. Anything's handled incorrectly, aka they drop the ball at any point. And that could be anything from the agent being too busy, the agent doesn't answer the cell phone, right? The quality of the photos, the order of the photos, how long does it take them to respond to a web lead online? What's the pricing strategy? What's the negotiation strategy? All these things matter, and they add up over time. It's okay sometimes if an agent drops 1 or 2 balls, but what you find is they drop really 3 or 4 or 5 balls that cost you a lot of your hard-earned equity on the back end. And so what I said, look, there's got to be a way that's better. And what most agents have done forever, I grew up in the business, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandpa, grandma, and grew up just in offices and just watch and study the industry. And what happens is most agents do the 3 Ps. Number 1, they promise rule to get the listing. Number 2, they put it into the MLS. And 3, they just pray that someone else brings a buyer. They're okay with half the commission. Meanwhile, they're on the street trying to get next listing. I've seen it in this business. I've been in this business over 17 years. And that's one thing that I've just seen over and over. And my mission was to say, look, there's got to be a better way. And really what we did is looked at what people did outside of real estate and real businesses and said, how can we manage those variables proactively so we can get really all those lined up the same way and knock them down like dominoes? And that's what we did. We designed this system. It's called the Guaranteed Sold System. The only proven system sells twice as fast and for up to 20% more money than traditional methods. And it works very, very, very well. What we do is we use 2 things. We use people, a.k.a. a team of specialists, right, who each person specializes in that piece of the sale, that piece of the process. We also use technology to help manage those variables proactively and stack the dominoes in the right order and knock them down at the right time in the right way. And what it does is it gives our client a huge competitive advantage. And so that's one thing that really helps put a lot of extra money in the pocket, and really is going to be something really, really important, if we do see a market shift significantly, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But on the flip side, there's 100-plus variables on the buy side. If each one's handled correctly, saves you money, get the property you want. If anything's handled incorrectly, aka the agent drops the ball, which happens over and over and over again, it costs you really your overall property you want or your equity that you could have when you buy the property. And so that system we designed there, it's called the Unfair Advantage Home Buying System, gets priority access to foreclosures, distress sales, desperate sellers, the absolute best negotiation and purchase price, as well as the home inspection to get you to the closing table. And so it's so important right now in 2 different ways. Number 1, we just had one of the hottest markets we've ever had. I've seen people cost themselves $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in equity because they didn't go with a true expert who could guide them through the process and pick the right strategy. And that's something that's really, really important you want to understand going forward. And as this market shifts, definitely going to be more important to have somebody like that. It's really going to make a difference. Before, you get your brand new friend who just got in real estate last week, they could put some cell phone photos on the MLS and get it sold. But with 25% less buyers like we're seeing right now, guess what? That strategy doesn't work anymore. You need someone with a proven, repeatable system that can get you that advantage, get the most amount of money. So we'll talk about more of that in the show here in a second, but that's definitely a must, and we'll take a quick break. Be right back.
Hey, Sean Hannity here with my trusted friend in the real estate market, Blake Sloan of Sloan Realty Group. So what do home sellers, what do they need to know about the market right now?
home sales, the market here on the Grand Strand, absolutely on fire. We're seeing record numbers in terms of prices that sellers are getting. It's almost unbelievable. We're seeing hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars coming in the Northeast that are just bidding up properties and getting sellers more money than they ever thought possible.
Got it. Now, how will that get them more money?
That's going to help get home sellers more money because there's more buyers here than we've ever seen before. But we're not sure how long that's going to last. We are seeing that start to level off a little bit, and some of that interest has started to slow down. So sellers definitely need to take advantage of the super hot market right now before there's any type of shift.
All right, as always, thanks for the insight. Call Blake Sloan today at 808-SOLD. That's 808-SOLD. Or online at blakesloan.com. That's blakesloan.com.
Hi, I'm Barbara Corcoran. I'm excited to connect with Blake Sloan, the only real estate agent in Myrtle Beach that I recommend. You offer several options to home sales, which really takes away the stress.
That's right. For sellers in a time crunch, we can agree to sell it by a certain date, pay cash for your home, or even rent it.
That's great. And if the seller has a bit more time?
We use our proven marketing plan to sell it for the highest price.
Work with my friend Blake Sloan and get your home sold on your terms.
Welcome back to Blake Sloan Real Estate Show. So we got the market update, and it's been a crazy week. I've had my phones been blowing up with people wanting to know what the heck's going on, what's happening. Got some people in a full-blown panic. Some people saying they're not. I have real estate agents, friends on Facebook and stuff across the country that half of them say it's going to crashing. Other half are saying nothing to worry about. So we're going to talk about what's going on, what happened, and how do we make good decisions. And I think it's important sometimes to just leave that emotion out and some of the fear out. And look at the data. I've been in the market, like I said, grew up in real estate my whole life, but I've been licensed selling full-time real estate since early January 2005. And I went through the whole, swing up last time, the whole, crash in 2008, and actually started our company in October 2008. And so probably the worst time ever in history to start a real estate company, but it made us very, very, very good at what we do and really very, very limber and are able to adjust. And so these are the type of markets that we'll be good at. But here's the thing, right? Big news last week, stock market. I think 10% drop in one day, 22% drop in 4 days over a period, including the weekend there. And so we had a huge run with interest rates, and actually interest rates jacked up big time on Monday in anticipation of the Federal Reserve meeting that was in the middle of the week last week. And they obviously raised the Federal Reserve rate up 75 basis points, which doesn't directly influence mortgage rates, but it indirectly influences them and definitely kind of determines the velocity of interest rates. And so we saw a huge jump in just kind of looking at what's happening, where if you look at just last week, the show I think was 5.55. It jumped all the way up to 6.28 on I think Monday, Tuesday, and it dropped back down on Friday down to 6.05. So that's obviously has a lot of buyers pump the brakes. I did a big news interview yesterday for TV 13 here on the CBS affiliate, and they kind of aired the same thing. Hey, look, what's going on? What's happening? We've seen kind of an overall gradual increase of interest rates since earlier this year, and that's obviously just had less buyers on the fence. And so part of that is when rates go up like that, there's two main things that happen. Number one, buyers can't afford the same level of home or property they could because they don't qualify for as much because, why? Their monthly payment goes up, right? So when we look at it, as rates go about 1%, increased payment about 10%, and so what costs them a certain amount more can now be a few hundreds of dollars more per month, and they can't afford that or it's not comfortable. And so we kind of call it buyers that pump the brakes a little bit. They back off and kind of sit back, and so we've seen that both in buyer traffic and also we've seen that in terms of new properties under contract. And I've been talking about this for a few weeks now, and it's not really a thing to be alarmed about. I do think you're seeing a correction in a way, and there's a bunch of variables. But the one thing I would say, look, we're definitely seeing a shift in a way. I kind of talked to our team about this in detail a lot and kind of what's happening and some similarities to what we saw in 2008 in terms of the media and people, kind of injecting that fear. But there's a bunch of variables. And so one thing we'll talk about in a few minutes is hey, look, as interest rates go up, there's definitely going to be less buyers. It's just a fact, right? Because it's more expensive. They're not going to buy. People are going to stay put. There's two different things that are significantly different than 2008, at least in my experience. And number one is we've been in an inventory crisis. There's still a 5 million unit home shortage across the United States. And what that comes from is there's a period of time where population was outpacing the amount of homes built after the 2008 crash. Why is that? Well, if you remember, it wiped out almost all developers. All the wealthy developers I knew at that time were wiped out, and really some big ones that were large corporations got wiped out too. And so what happened was, after 2008 and 2012, 13, they just weren't building very much. If you remember driving around back then, all the empty neighborhoods with the pads laid down or the empty lots and had the road and infrastructure in, but there just wasn't homes being built. There was a long period there, and what that did was it created this inventory shortage, which on top of that, you take that and put low interest rates on top of it, is just fuel for the fire to see massive increase. And like one of the things we've seen just last month, if you look year over year, condo values are up 48%, which is not something that's sustainable. So there has to be some type of correction away. And the question I think is going to be is, how severe is it? Obviously, I don't know that answer, but the best thing I can do is kind of look at the data and say, okay, here's what's happening. That's the one wild card. The second piece of that is there's a lot of homeowners, and I was talking to a big hedge fund manager, one of the sharpest guys I know. He's based in Texas. We're part of the same mastermind group together named Stuart. And he had this really good point. He said, look, the one challenge you're going into is there's so many homeowners right now who have massive equity who got in at rates in 2% and 3%. And even, the ones in low fours that are very, very comfortable in their payment, they're very, very low. And as rates have gone up, you're going to see them be a little less likely to want to sell. And so that also keeps inventory very, very low. And the main thing he talked about is once rates normalize, if you look back, and I think 2008, the whole 2000s, the average rate is about 6.2%. And that was kind of that 5 to 6 was really normalized rates. And so everyone's been so used to super low rates, which driven these prices up. And so those are kind of some wild cards to look out for. I do think we'll see a slowdown. We may see some dip in prices. I do think Myrtle Beach as a whole, very, 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 very well insulated compared to a lot of areas. Why is that? Well, we're the fastest growing city in America 2 years in a row, right? Obviously, and here's the thing, it's a lot different than 2008. When I was selling stuff in 2005, 6, 7, it was mostly all speculation. People buying 2 and 3 houses at a time. There's condos that we'd sell it, close on it, the owner mark it up $50,000, never walk into it, put it back on the market the next day and sell it. And so there's been a whole lot of changes, but ideally, I think it's a little bit different now, which is very, very good news for homeowners. But here's the thing, the other wild card in this, that's really the unknown, is that we have a government, a lot of government in place that, I'm not saying they're trying to destroy everything on purpose, but if I was destroying everything on purpose, or a lot of those things on purpose, I probably wouldn't do a whole lot of things different. So that's the one thing that's going to be a wild card, is how bad does the economy get. The good news, is, I really share this with my team a lot, is that it's not going to be housing driven like last time, but there's a lot of unknowns. And so ideally, if I'm a home seller, I'm thinking about, hey, look, we definitely have scraped a little bit of a peak, because when you're seeing higher rates, you're going to see buyers drop off. Remember 2 weeks ago on my show, we talked about buyer traffic overall online was down about 20-25%, and you're seeing that kind of follow through right now with pending deals and deals going under contract, and also with buyer traffic in terms of showings. And so that is going to have an effect, because the bottom line is it is a supply and demand based business, and price is always that lagging indicator that comes in the back end. So anytime that you see supply is up, right, which is happening, demand is down, which is happening, right, you're going to see lagging indicator soften. The question is going to be, how tight is that inventory? I do think it's going to help a little bit to softening the blow, just because there is such a shortage, and there's going to be buyers that have to buy, sellers that have to sell. And so it's going to be very interesting to watch, but it is something to kind of watch closely. And if I'm thinking about, hey, look, take some chips off the table, selling and really kind of cashing out in a way, like I've said in many shows in the past, that, hey, we're probably scraping the top. That's something we're seeing right now, which I think is very, very important. So if you want to just talk about your individual situation, we're here to help serve. That's one thing we've been doing on this show 12-plus years, is like we're here to serve, to give you the information. Obviously, a case-by-case basis matters. And so one thing I'll dig in and just get into the data is looking at, there's 2 types of data. Number one is the rear view mirror data, which is properties that close. It's a little more dated, because what happens is it's done month by month. Those close last month, and they went into contract 30 to 60 days prior. Now, I like to watch real time. We started doing this since COVID-19 started, the lockdown. We watch every day in the previous 7 days how many properties go under contract, and obviously how much volume goes under contract, and how many properties were on the market. And so if you look at overall kind of what's happening in terms of marketplace, so the last 7 days, as of this morning, there's 567 properties under contract for $189,078,000, which is below last week. If you look at last week, 580 under contract, $280 million. Right? If you just go back to 4 weeks ago, though, a little 5 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago here, based on this week's show, 690 under contract for $215 million. And that was also a drop of what we had seen previously. And so we were in the 700s every week, ideally. As rates have climbed up, you're seeing that number go back into the 500s. And right now, 567. But if you look at the week versus week trend, it is turning down in terms of new properties under contract. Now, on the flip side, you're also seeing active listings go up. And so as of this morning in Horry County, there are 618 active properties. If you look at last week's show, 598. Week before that, 531. Week before that, 478. And the week before that, 382. So between a 5 to 6 week period here, you went from 382 to really right now 618. That's a significant increase in terms of what you're seeing in inventory, and that's kind of what you're seeing. There's two reasons for that, right? Sellers are kind of saying, hey, look, maybe time to cash out a little bit. We're seeing it kind of scrape the top, want to kind of get rid of what we had or max out in our equity here, which is also aligned with the seasonality of our summer market, when some people just wait to put their house in the market there as well. And so we're going to keep watching that for you. Again, we have all kind of data. We could do a 6-hour show on data, but that's the overall general part of the numbers that we'll probably see close next month. Those are last 7 days. Again, those will take really 30 to 60 days to close, and we'll kind of see what happens. Now, into the quick market overview for anyone that missed last week's show. It's interesting. We've seen 2 straight months of decline overall, and a big shout-out to Ronald. He's one of our listeners. He's actually a client of ours now, a very, very loyal listener, has a very, very amazing high-end house in Myrtle's Inlet. And it's one of the things he talked about. He's like, can you get a little more specific in some of those numbers? And yeah, absolutely. And so we're seeing there's 2 types of numbers to look at, year versus year, which would be May versus May. Why is that important? Because we're a seasonal market here. You also can look at month versus month in terms of trend. And so last month in May, closed sales were down 12.8% from the same month last year. If you look at last year, there were 698 properties that closed in the month of May for a single-family resale home, right? We do that because it's more accurate data. Some of the new construction, a lot of the companies just don't report it. They may list one house as active, but they actually have 5 that are active. So we stick with resale data. It's really the most accurate, and that's what you see kind of most people come here to purchase and sell. And it really applies to our listeners the most because that's what most of them are selling, right? It's something they lived in. And look at this last month, it was 609. So if you go last year, overall, May 698, this May 609. But if you go back month versus month, in March, there were 702 properties closed, single families. And then obviously in April, 653. Then May down to 609. So there's a trend for really the last 3 months that you're seeing trend down when time that probably should be kind of going up. And that obviously has something to do with interest rates and kind of what's going on. So that's overall price there. You're seeing that down right now, 12.8%. It's not as bad as last week's show. It was right around 15 last week, but some of the agents have put data in a little late, about 15, 16 days late when it should have been marked as sold overall. So that's the key part. Now here's what everybody cares about is price. And so price, like we mentioned, is a lagging indicator. It's usually 2 to 3 months behind that we see of what's happening. And so right now, median price up 31.6% from the same time last year. Right now, it's at $380,000. If you go to last year in May, it was $288,800. So significant jump there. A lot of extra equity for homeowners, and that's up month versus month. Really, the entire since last year, since last May, it's climbed up pretty much every single month. Now, average sale price, interesting enough, is up 21.1% from the same month last year. So last May, $392,706. This May, $475,440. So a 21% increase in terms of what's the overall value. But interesting enough, look at average value, it did decline month versus month. So if you look at April, $486,984. May down to $475,440. So about a $10,000 drop. That could be just bumps on the graph, but also I think you're probably seeing that price soften a little bit where we had some people on there that were trying to get extra high prices, a lot of people that were getting prices, right? Bidding wars, all kind of crazy things. And so it's something to watch out for overall in terms of what's happening. And some things were just, there's a lot of sellers just trying it to see what will happen. And if they get it, they get it, don't, they don't. And then sometimes what you're seeing is they're now reducing to kind of get in line with where they should be. But overall month supply, that's also something to look at. The overall supply of homes, which is the amount listed, is up 27.3% from the same month last year. And so that's important, right? You've seen that climb pretty much every month, and it was done at 0.9 months in around January, February this year. It started climbing in March, and it jumped up 1.2 months. Right now it's at 1.4 months of inventory. It's still a seller's market. A seller's market's anything less than 6 months of inventory. Right now it's at 1.4 months. Now, that's something we'll keep watching. I do think we'll probably see that climb pretty quickly, especially if you look at buyer confidence gets a little bit let's say, swayed from the news and the things that are happening, but there's still a super, short amount of inventory. Really, there's kind of a crisis still, where it's very, very, very low, and we'll probably see that stay low unless you see just all kind of stuff dump on the market. Here's one of the main numbers, though, I've been watching that's important. It's buyer traffic into actual houses. So the data comes from anybody that schedules a showing across our entire MLS and opens the door. It's down 23.4%, and it's been down really the past few months. And so it kind of peaked out in February, dropped in March, dropped in April, then dropped again in May with 5.9 showings per property. Back in February, it's 8.3 showings. And so as rates have climbed, the overall thing you're seeing buyer traffic drop down a little bit. And so just something to watch overall and see for that. But if I'm a home seller, I'm saying, hey, look, you're not necessarily seeing gloom and doom yet. I know the news is saying that. I'm not saying that's definitely not possible, but inventory is still very, very low. There's still a 5 million unit home shortage, but you're definitely going to see prices soften, which we are seeing right now. And so you'll probably see some correction type numbers where, again, there's a lot of sellers we're talking to. They're just trying to get a crazy number. In many cases were, but now at 23 to 25% less buyers, it may be more realistic and more of a correction. And so that's just something to kind of look at overall. Really quick, I'll hit a couple of just the micro market numbers since I'm a little late on time. But looking at City of Myrtle Beach, which is kind of the main hub, so to speak, really kind of drives everything else. If you look at overall month versus month, Myrtle Beach saw a 27.8% decrease last month in sales, which is pretty significant, right? That means Myrtle Beach usually leads the pack. You'll watch everyone will follow them a few months later, just because Myrtle Beach is kind of the middle. So that's 29577, 29572. So April of last year, 108 properties closed. April this year, 78 properties closed. The good news is median price still up 18.9% from 355 up to 422, which is awesome overall. And so that's good news overall. Year to date, though, sales are down 17.5%. So that's interesting to see where year to date is down 17%. Price is up 11.9% year to date. Condos last month down 8.3% in the city of Myrtle Beach. Here's the crazy part. Median sales price in the middle of Myrtle Beach up 47.7% year over year. So if you look at April last year in Myrtle Beach, the overall median price of a condo was $149,000. This year, $220,000. So again, what happened in COVID when first lockdowns happened, all the houses really got balled up very, very, very quickly. Inventory dried up, prices skyrocketed, and what happened was condos were more affordable, so a lot of buyers who were before looking at single families did move to condos, and they bought those up pretty much all of 2021. So that's what you're seeing happen there overall in that aspect. North Myrtle Beach area, their sales last month were up 3%, which is interesting, right? Overall median home value in North Myrtle Beach, though, which is 29582, was up 37.5% from $431,500 last year to $593,131 this year, which is great news. Year to date, they're also up 11.2%. So you can see a contrast there. I do think you'll probably see North Myrtle Beach follow that a little bit here in the next couple months. Little River sales down 18.8%. Prices up 32.8% from $278,000 to $369,155, which is awesome. Not a lot of condos there. Loris and Longs down 27.7% last month in terms of sales. Prices up 28.1% from $225,000 up to $289,435. Garden City, Myrtle's Inlet area, which is a pretty big area there. There's a bunch of different neighborhoods, different types of properties. But if you look overall single family, sales were down year over year, down 35%. The good news is prices up 42.5%, which is really unheard of for single families to be that much of a jump from $324,000 to $461,855 just in that 12-month period. So that's something we'll see kind of what's going on. They're still getting 99.4% of asking price on average there last month. In the Pawleys Island, Litchfield, sales down 33.8%. Median price also up 42.5%, which is insane. So from $434,273 last year, 2021 of May, now to $618,650. And so we've seen lots of big sales coming through, lots of that. And I do think you're going to see that soften up a little bit in terms of how that goes and kind of what's going on overall with that. Also, Georgetown, up 12.9%. And again, we saw a lot of people just kind of moving a little further south. It's a little more affordable. Median price up 6.9% from $261 up to $280. And so my overall thought here, right, you want to keep watching rates. I feel they're going to continue probably going up a little bit, at least in the short term, and probably be made long term. And so if I'm thinking about selling, definitely take advantage of that. You may want to take some time here and really just say, hey, if I want to cash out, if I'm thinking about selling and I want to cash at the top, definitely reach out to me. 843-808-SOLD. I don't want to, and Ronald actually mentioned, too, about maybe his wife kind of being scared. There's a lot of agents that are gloom and doom, and I'm not necessarily saying that it's like that, but I do know if I'm a seller, it's a good thing to think about kind of cashing out the top if I want to make sure, especially my investment properties, anything I have rentals, if I have a rental that I don't really like dealing with anymore, or just got headaches or just kind of tired of dealing with overall, definitely want to think about cashing out and really having some of those funds to reinvest for other opportunities, because we're definitely going to see some more inventory just like we have seen. And there's a lot of cash buyers, and we still have a ton of people right now buying Airbnbs from across the country. And there's also a recent article out this past week that showed Myrtle Beach is really one of the top 3 most affordable beach destinations in the country, which is why we're still seeing a lot of investors come here, buy out properties, even single families, and rent those out. And so my overall opinion is we're very, very well insulated compared to a lot of areas, very, very high demand, still very, very, very affordable compared to a lot of places, but it may be time to take some of the chips off the table. If you're thinking about that or thinking about selling, reach out, call me, 843-808-SOLD. One thing overall, too, to think about is a lot of sellers weren't selling before because they couldn't find anything else to buy. That's not necessarily the case anymore because inventory has jumped up, right, almost doubled in a way, where before, maybe just 6 weeks ago, there's in the 300s. Right now, it's up in the 600s, and there's more opportunities for you. So if you're looking to make that lateral move right now or the downsize, it's a great, great opportunity because you can cash out max equity, and you have some other opportunities there, and some sales may be a little more flexible. So if one or more, reach out, call me, 843-808-SOLD. Take a quick break.
WRNN listeners, Clay Travis here. As investors in real estate, Buck and I both know exactly what to look for to find the agent with the best tools and marketing to get the highest sales price possible for a home.
Totally true, Clay. And here in Myrtle Beach, that agent is our friend Blake Sloan of Sloan Realty Group. If you need to sell a home and buy a new one, ask Blake about his guarantee.
Get this, Blake guarantees to sell your home at a price and deadline you agree to, or he'll buy it himself. And since you know when your current home will sell by and for how much, you can buy your next home without worrying about getting stuck with 2 mortgages.
There's simply no other agent in the market who has a guarantee that will line up against what Blake Sloan can offer you. So when you're looking to sell and buy, he is your guy. Read nearly 750 5-star reviews by Googling Sloan Realty Group. Give Blake a call today and start packing. That's Sloan Realty Group.
And tune in to Blake's show Saturdays at 9 a.m. and Sundays at 11:30 a.m.
It's not a question of if, but when will a hurricane strike. Mid-Atlantic Storm Protection, giving you the protection your home deserves. Mid-Atlantic Storm Protection offers an affordable, easy-to-install home protection system that won't damage your exterior. Say no to plywood. Say no to unsightly screws that will damage your home. Say yes and contact us today for a free no-hassle consultation and estimate. Visit MidAtlanticStormProtection.com to learn more. Mid-Atlantic Storm Protection. Protection your home deserves.
Bingo Drive is the #1 free bingo game. Bingo Drive makes playing bingo easy, even when you need to keep socially distanced. Experience a new way to play bingo. Play online with Bingo Drive and communicate with people anytime, anywhere. Download Bingo Drive in the App Store or Google Play today.
Thanks for spending your Saturday morning with Hot Talk 99.5. But stick around all day because we have In the Pits coming up at noon, Kim Commando at 2, Dave Ramsey at 5, and Free Talk Live at 7. Only on Hot Talk 99.5.